For 6 long years, 30 countries fought ruthlessly, day and night. More than 60 million people died, and nuclear weapons were used for the first time in history. This was the Second World War, the most destructive event of modern times. The warring countries were divided into 2 military alliances, the Allied powers and the Axis powers. The Allied powers were led by the United States, the United Kingdom and France. The Axis powers were led by Germany, Italy and Japan. At the heart of the conflict was Germany, led by Adolf Hitler and his National Socialist German Workers' Party, or in short, the Nazi Party. When Hitler's party came to power in 1933, everyone started to refer to Germany as Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany was based on an ideology called Nazism, or National Socialism, that promoted violent practices to restore German pride. Nazism gave the German people new hope. It promised not only to restore German pride, but also to pull Germany out of recession. In September 1939, in order to conquer more land and resources for the German people, Hitler invaded Poland, sparking off World War II. First, France and the UK fought Germany to defend Poland. Soon, more and more countries joined either the Allied or the Axis powers. Both sides exhausted each other fighting on land, underwater and in the skies. When the bloodshed finally ended in 1945, the Allied powers demanded justice from the defeated Axis powers, especially Germany. A tribunal was set up in the German city of Nuremberg to prosecute Nazi leaders and punish them for their crimes. Adolf Hitler was not tried at Nuremberg, as he had committed suicide on 30th April 1945. A month before World War II ended. But 12 other leading Nazi generals were sentenced to death by the tribunal. The Nuremberg trials speak of countless crimes committed by Adolf Hitler and his Nazi government. Besides invading foreign countries, the Nazi government tortured and killed 6 million Jews, 200,000 Gypsies, 1 million Polish civilians, and 70,000 mentally challenged Germans, all in an effort to keep Germany only for pure Germans. Nazi Germany's efforts to eliminate the Jews and other communities are referred to as genocidal crimes. The term genocide was coined in 1944 to describe the act of destroying a community based on nationalism, racism, religion, or ethnicity. The term was accepted by the United Nations under international law after Nazi war criminals were prosecuted at Nuremberg. The genocide committed by Nazi Germany between 1933 and 1945 is referred to as the Holocaust. It overlapped with Hitler's ambition to conquer the world by sparking off World War II. The effects of both these catastrophic events reverberate through the world even today. The years 1918 and 1919 were a significant period in German history, marked by a series of important events. The German Revolution of 1918, defeat in World War I, abdication of Emperor Wilhelm, and the birth of Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic, established in 1919, replaced the imperial government and formed a parliament called the Reichstag. However, the conditions laid down by the peace treaty at Versailles made things very difficult for the budding republic. Under the treaty, Germany was held responsible for the First World War and was asked to pay £6 billion as war damages. In addition to this, Germany had to also give up its army, its overseas colonies, 13% of its territory, 75% of its iron, and 26% of its coal resources to France, Poland, Denmark, and Lithuania. The Weimar Republic struggled to meet the terms of the Versailles Treaty, and Germans blamed the leaders of the new Weimar Republic for the humiliation and defeat. Socialists, Catholics, and Democrats who supported the Republic were ridiculed and called the November Criminals. Infighting began between different political groups. Most attacks came from the Spartacist League, a group of radical socialists. The Weimar Republic crushed the Spartacist uprising with the help of a group of war veterans called the Free Corps. The dejected Spartacist League then formed the Communist Party of Germany. And so, the differences between communists and socialists grew and became incompatible. The Weimar Republic faced an economic crisis in 1923 when they were unable to pay the war damages. This made France invade the Ruhr Valley to compensate the deficit. To combat the situation, the Weimar printed extra currency notes. This resulted in hyperinflation, causing a fall in the value of the German mark. So much so that a loaf of bread that had cost 163 marks in 1922 cost 15 million marks in 1923. It was common to see Germans carry cartloads of currency notes while waiting to buy bread. Finally, moved by global sympathy, the Americans intervened and aided Germany through the Dawes Plan. Through this plan, the US would loan Germany money which could be paid back in smaller installments. Owing to the bailout by the Americans, Germany remained stable between 1924 and 1928. However, the support by the Americans was withdrawn in 1929 when the Wall Street exchange crashed. On 24 October 1929, referred to as Black Thursday, 13 million shares were sold at the Wall Street Exchange. The world had entered the Great Depression. The US national income fell by half. Like most countries, Germany was dependent on US money, and consequently, the nation was severely hit with this economic crisis. For the next 3 years, unemployment spread through every German city and peaked at 6 million in 1932. With no jobs available, soon the youth took to criminal activities. The situation was miserable. Middle-class Germans were petrified of getting proletarianized or reduced to the ranks of poor workers while peasants were left with no food to feed their children. The Great Depression also affected the Weimar Republic, which was struggling to stay alive. One of the major flaws was the president's power to declare emergency and suspend civil rights and rule. Despite the president's power and changing the cabinet 20 times over a short period, the Weimar could not control the situation. The people of Germany were already disheartened with the Republic after the war and the Treaty of Versailles, and this situation made them lose complete faith in the Weimar. A year later, in 1933, the Weimar Republic finally collapsed, paving the way for Hitler's Nazi Party to take control of Germany. It was a clear, bright day in 1942 when several German children saw the Focke-Wulf fly over a cornfield in Bavaria. They saluted the German fighter plane, excited about reporting the sighting in class tomorrow. These children didn't go to any ordinary school. They were a part of the Deutsches Jungvolk, or German youth, especially set up by the Nazi regime in 1930. All German boys aged 10 to 14 years were a part of the Jungvolk. Here, they learnt to differentiate between friendly and enemy aircrafts. They also learnt why a pure Aryan race was required to keep their country safe. Their textbooks were filled with anti-Semitic stereotypes. They were encouraged to be mentally and physically tough and play combat sports. Emotional weakness was frowned on, and as they swore their loyalty to Hitler, they dreamt of becoming a Nazi soldier to defend the Third Reich. These Jungvolk helped Hitler ensure that German children were schooled in the Nazi way of thinking from childhood. When the boys were between 14 to 18 years of age, they joined the Hitler Youth, a paramilitary organization established since 1922. By 1930, it had enrolled 25,000 students. These boys were selected to become Aryan supermen who would fight as faithful soldiers of the Third Reich. They were trained in weapon usage, assault, and basic tactics. The concept of war was glorified and the concept of democracy condemned. Aggression and violence were promoted as tools for eliminating anti-Nazi and anti-Aryan German citizens. After the age of 18, the German youth that did not score well joined the labor service, where they were asked to serve in the armed forces or the Nazi government, while top scorers channeled their energy towards war practice in the Nazi army. Nazi girls were schooled in the Nazi League of German Girls to become good mothers and nurture the Aryan supermen. Hitler believed in the age-old gender divide. Men were warriors and women were homemakers. His policies encouraged women to drop out of university and the workforce. Girls were taught to get married at a young age, keep a good home, and have as many pure Aryan children as possible. This would ensure a continuous supply of strong soldiers and workers required to expand the Nazi Germany. Newly married couples got government loans. For each child they didn't need to pay back 25% of the loan. 4 children meant the entire loan was free. August 12th was Hitler's mother's birthday, and each year on this day, he awarded the Motherhood Cross to women who had given birth to the largest number of children. The Gold Cross went to women who had produced 8 children, silver was for 6 children, and bronze was for 4 children. However, there were those that did not comply or fit into Hitler's plan. Children who were weak, challenged, or disinterested were expelled. Women who maintained contact with Jews, Poles, or Russians were put in trucks and paraded through the town with shaved heads to shame them. Opposition was not an option in the police state of Nazi Germany. Every German that survived between 1933 and 1945 in Nazi Germany did so because they were influenced by Hitler's Nazi ideology. As Hitler believed it was every German's duty to assure the future of the German race, he made sure Nazi propaganda reached every German. A sea of people, a storm of words, a sliver of hope. When the world was punishing Germany for its role in World War I, there was one person who was devoted to helping Germans stand up for themselves. His name was Adolf Hitler. Born in 1889 in an Austrian village called Braunau-Enen, Hitler was raised by an overprotective mother and a disciplinarian father. He wanted to be a painter, but his father wanted him to be a civil servant. They often fought and Hitler got beaten, but he never gave up his dreams. At the age of 17, he applied to an art school in Vienna, but got rejected. While he worked odd jobs in Vienna to make ends meet, he often heard anti-Semitic speeches. These speeches attacked all non-German speaking people and listed ways to control the entry of Jewish immigrants into Austria-Hungary. Soon, Hitler developed a dislike for the Jewish community. Desperate to change his life, Hitler left for Munich in 1913 and enrolled in the German army. World War I had broken out. Hitler fought the Allied armies and was often exposed to enemy fire. But his efforts did not go unnoticed. Hitler received the Iron Cross, a military recognition for bravery, twice. These awards just marked the beginning of Hitler's quick road to global recognition. In 1918, World War I ended. Germany elected a new government called the Weimar Republic and signed the Versailles Peace Treaty in 1919. This upset many Germans, especially war heroes like Hitler. They argued that when the German army had remained undefeated in the field, why was the Weimar government accepting the harsh and demeaning terms of the Versailles Treaty? Citizens and heroes became anti-government. In 1919, Hitler was sent to inspect and influence the German Workers' Party. Instead, he got impressed with their ideas. With his excellent oratory skills, his devotion to German pride, and his growing anti-Jewish sentiments, Hitler became an excellent spokesman for the party and was elected the party leader 2 years later. For the next decade, Hitler and the renamed German Workers' Party which was now called the National Socialist German Workers' Party, used various propaganda to reach out to the German people. They held marches, conducted parades, and gave strong speeches at massive rallies where he spoke against the Treaty of Versailles, the Weimar Constitution, and Jews. Nazi propaganda also included Nazi iconic symbols such as the Nazi salute, the swastika, and the eagle atop the swastika. Hitler's powerful speeches and grand rallies were reinforced through colorful posters and flyers. The waving red flags further added to the aggressive energy of Nazi parades. When Hitler got arrested after a failed coup to take over the Weimar in 1923, he wrote his famous autobiography, Mein Tags, or My Struggle. His beliefs resonated with the German people's insecurities of a stable future. Mein Tags was a bestseller and motivated Germans to fight for their pride. While his racist, aggressive campaigning was questionable, his devotion to Germany was not. People had lost faith in the unstable Weimar, which had forgotten the plight of the German worker and soldier. They were praying for a savior, and they got one. In the 1930 election, the Nazi Party got a majority of the seats in the Reichstag. They won again in the 1932 elections. The Weimar Republic fell and was replaced with Hitler's Third Reich government. On 30th of January 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. During the 13 years of the Third Reich, Hitler had achieved his life purpose: to unite and secure German nationalism. His circumstances, personal strengths and weaknesses all contributed to making him the most influential and powerful dictator the world ever saw. The son of a simple Austrian civil servant from across the German border had dictated the fate of the German people, the Jewish community, and the World War II, leaving his mark on global military policy forever. On 30th January 1933, thousands of torches were lit as Nazis paraded at Berlin's Brandenburg Gate to celebrate. Their leader, Adolf Hitler, had just been appointed Chancellor of Germany by President Hindenburg. His Nazi government, called the Third Reich, wasted little time and began implementing a series of undemocratic policies, such as the Reichstag Fire Decree, the Enabling Act, the Gestapo, and the concentration camps. It was a cold February night when firefighters and policemen were informed that the Reichstag building was ablaze. By the time they arrived, most of the building was destroyed. They arrested the only person found lurking inside, a Dutch communist. Fearing a communist revolution, Hitler immediately used the Reichstag fire as an excuse to pass the Reichstag Fire Decree, a law that stopped German citizens from talking and moving freely. Thousands of communist leaders were arrested and thrown into jail. Next, Hitler convinced Hindenburg to pass the Enabling Act on 23 March 1933. This act gave Hitler the power to pass laws without consulting the Reichstag. It was officially called the Law for Removing the Distress of the People, but in effect it legalized Hitler's dictatorship. Soon, Nazi-appointed secret state police called the Gestapo roamed the streets. They were supported by the Shield Squadron, an intelligence service, and paramilitary stormtroopers. With so many forces on the ground, Nazi Germany became a controlled police state. Germans lived in constant fear of the Gestapo officers who could arrest and imprison people without being questioned by any court. Prisoners often disappeared from Gestapo torture chambers after they were violently beaten or electrocuted. The Gestapo was also responsible for setting up and administering concentration camps. These camps were a series of buildings enclosed with a barbed wire fence where Nazis forcibly imprisoned communists, union leaders, Jews, and later Soviet prisoners during World War II. Soon, concentration camps and extermination camps mushroomed all over Germany. Not only did the concentration camps confine and torture prisoners, they supplied free labor to the Nazi government as prisoners were made to produce armaments and machinery. The extermination camps were purely meant for killing prisoners that were unable to work or undesirable to the Nazis. In 1934, when President Hindenburg died, Hitler combined the offices of the President and Chancellor and became the sole Führer, or leader of Germany. With his anti-democratic policies in place, Hitler was ready to start reconstructing the German economy. Advising Hitler on economic growth was Dr. Hjalmar Schacht, Germany's Minister of Economics. Using innovative policies, Schacht was able to reduce the economic deficit by creating new trade agreements with Southeast Europe. He was also able to reduce unemployment by hiring German workers to construct highways called autobahns across the length and breadth of Germany. The Volkswagen Beetle became a symbol of the German workers' newfound prosperity. With trade unions abolished, labor worked long hours at low pay, making the Volkswagen factory successful. And soon, the German economy became the quickest among all world economies to recover from the Great Depression. Always prepared for war, Hitler increased government spending on armaments production. Schacht was against this, as he felt military spending would lead to inflation. In order to spread his military might, Hitler ordered 32,000 soldiers to reoccupy the Rhineland on 7th March 1936. France and Britain did not react, leading Hitler to believe that he could conquer East Europe without evoking any reaction from the Allies. In 1938, he fulfilled his desire of uniting Austria-Hungary with Germany by bullying its chancellor into resigning. One people, one empire, one leader became the most repeated Nazi slogan. After this, Hitler annexed Czechoslovakia. By 1939, the Nazi government was spending double of what it was earning through taxes. To save the German economy and increase his resources, Hitler invaded Poland in September 1939, sparking off World War II. To gain support, Germany entered the Tripartite Pact, or Three-Power Pact, in September 1940 with Italy and Japan. This agreement established the Axis powers in World War II. As the war gained momentum, Hitler decided to invade the Soviet Union on 22nd of June 1941. After a few defeats in the initial years, by 1945, the Soviet Red Army managed to push back the Nazis all the way back to Berlin. In the meantime, Japan was expanding its power. In December 1941, Japan attacked the US base at Pearl Harbor, forcing the United States to enter World War II. The Americans got back at Japan by dropping nuclear atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki on 6th and 9th of August 1945. Hitler's efforts to restructure Germany ended up destroying the world around it. With the bombing at Hiroshima-Nagasaki and the defeat of Hitler, the World War finally came to an end in May 1945. Partly influenced by Darwin's theory of evolution and Spencer's survival of the fittest theory, and partly influenced by his own hatred towards the Jews, Hitler reasoned that Nordic German Aryans were racially superior and more likely to succeed and survive. Germany's racial superiority would secure Germany's future. He had already eliminated his political enemies, the communists, his economic enemies, the trade and labor unions. It was now time to eliminate his racial enemies, the Jews, Gypsies, blacks, Russians, Poles, anyone who was not a racially pure Nordic Aryan German. And so, the systematic humiliation and pauperization of the Jewish community began, leading to the deportation and murder of approximately 6 million European Jews. This persecution of the Jews was an act of genocide, and the period from 1933 to 1945 in which it was carried out is referred to as the Holocaust. The persecution and genocide were carried out in 3 stages. Stage 1 was called exclusion. Between 1933 and 1939, Nazi German shops, restaurants, and political rallies freely distributed anti-Semitic propaganda to ensure that Jewish businesses and services were boycotted and their properties were either confiscated or forcibly sold off. Jews could no longer work in the government or the armed forces. They couldn't marry non-Jews, and even quarter-and-a-half Jews were no longer citizens of their own country. Often, their houses were attacked and synagogues were burned. Stage 2 was called ghettoization. From 1940 to 1944, Jews were further isolated from German society. They were forced to live in Jew-only ghettos in the general government area. which comprised of German-occupied parts of Poland. They had to wear the yellow Star of David, and the letter J was marked in their passports. Since Jews could not work as doctors or visit German doctors, the ghettos were infested with disease. Jews who survived were transported in good trains to concentration camps for the final step, or as Hitler called it, the final solution. Stage 3 was called annihilation. Prisoners, men, women and children, were brought mostly to Auschwitz, the largest Nazi concentration and extermination camp in the world. It was located in Nazi-occupied Poland. Then, without warning, they would be asked to take a shower inside a big room with shower nozzles on the ceiling. But instead of water, they would be drenched with cyanide pellets. These Nazi gas chambers killed 20,000 people each day. The Jews were not the only people to be put to death. Hitler was so determined to make this pure race fantasy come true that he forcibly euthanized Germans who were physically and mentally challenged, unwell, gay, or in any way abnormal. This was carried out under the Nazis' T4 or euthanasia program. And then, finally, on 19th May 1943, Germany was declared clean of Jews. Hitler had achieved his Nazi policy of creating a racially pure German state. Ironically, it was a Jewish lieutenant years ago who awarded Hitler his first-class Iron Cross after World War I. The same cross that made Hitler a war hero and consequently the leader of Nazi Germany. May God Almighty give our work His blessing, strengthen our purpose, and endow us with wisdom and the trust of our people. For we are fighting not for ourselves, but for Germany. This was the closing of Adolf Hitler's proclamation speech to the people of Germany on 1st of February 1933, the day after he was appointed Chancellor. Though Nazi Germany was a totalitarian regime, Hitler valued the support of the German public as he genuinely believed he was working to secure their future. As leader of the Nazi Party, he relied on his powerful speeches at events and rallies to spread Nazi ideology and influence public opinion. But after coming to power in 1933, Hitler appointed Joseph Goebbels as Minister of Propaganda and launched a systematic and aggressive marketing campaign. Over the 12 years that the Nazi Party was in power, they continuously injected pro-Nazi posters, books, newspapers, films, magazines, and comic books on a directionless German public with an aim to popularize radical nationalistic policies. The messages were clear. Jews were the enemies as they were responsible for making Germans jobless. Additionally, Hitler encouraged every Nazi youth to dream of serving his country through military enlistment and every Nazi woman to focus on raising pure German children and taking care of her home. Cleverly coined terminology or code words were used to convince the people that all of Hitler's ideas were actually theirs. In addition to that, these terms disguised the immorality of the acts the Nazi regime was carrying out. For instance, words like kill or murder were never used in their official communication. Instead, mass killings were termed special treatment or final solution for the Jews. When the physically and mentally challenged were eliminated, it was called euthanasia, which means good death. Evacuation meant deporting people to gas chambers, which were called disinfection areas. The most popular pro-Nazi book was Hitler's biography, Mein Kampf, where he outlined his ideas and methods for creating effective political propaganda. Daily newspapers across Germany twisted the truth to suit Nazi ideology every day. The most popular anti-Semitic film was The Eternal Jew, in which Jews were likened to rats and pests. Censorship was also a part of the Nazi regime's behind-the-scenes propaganda efforts. Goebbels banned the American anti-war film All Quiet on the Western Front from showing in Germany. For Hitler, the truth was something you believed, not something that needed to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. Using creative presentation, emotional appeals, and aggressive promotion, Nazi propaganda spread the truth of Nazism, captured the imagination and loyalty of the German people, and united Germany in a singular belief. The Third Reich of Dreams by Charlotte Berard was a book that captured the dreams that ordinary German Jews had about Hitler during the Holocaust. It explains the subconscious level at which the Nazi regime was operating. Though the Jews were eventually killed, they died 1 million deaths before the final solution. Jews made many efforts to write and record their experiences in the ghettos and camps. When the Warsaw Ghetto was being emptied, they placed their documents in 3 milk cans along with other containers and buried the cans in the cellars of the buildings in 1943. These documents were discovered in 1950. Though the Jews thought everyone hated them, it was not so. Germans were divided in their view of the Holocaust. Some Germans hated Jews, believed they were inferior, marked their homes, and supported the persecution. They were grateful to Hitler for reviving the economy and for their newfound sense of German pride, to which they turned a blind eye to on how it was being achieved. While other Germans actively resisted the spread of Nazism, but protests were easily suppressed by the Gestapo. Many Germans were spectators who lived with fear and guilt. Pastor Niemöller was a German religious leader who opposed Hitler's views. His poem, They Thought They Were Free, speaks of the political apathy of bystanders who did nothing to stop Hitler. Other community leaders also tried to stop the genocide and the war. Mahatma Gandhi, who had been non-violently resisting the British, wrote to Hitler. Pope Pius XII also made a plea to the Hungarian head of state to save Hungarian Jews. However, it was only when the Allied powers won World War II that the Holocaust was actually addressed. Till the Nuremberg trials, no one had a clear picture, only suspicion regarding the genocide. the Jews wanted the world to know what they had endured. Though the Nazis tried to burn several records of Jewish prisoners, the stories that survived, they are visible through websites, podcasts, documentaries, poetry, memorials and museums across the world today. In memory of the genocide, in memory of the sacrifice of those who tried to stop it, and in memory of the victims who helplessly suffered it, the Holocaust Memorial Day is observed on 27th January.